Hey, welcome back to the BVB podcast. My name's Jacob, joined as always by Carver. How's it going, man? How are you doing?
Got my y'all mind if I have a good week sweatshirt on again, so that should be pretty self-telling. How are you?
Yeah, same. I need that same sweater. I do appreciate that it's not quite the Dortmund yellow, but I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
gold. It's gold and black, so it's good enough. It's a crazy week. Yeah, work's getting crazy, ramping into things, and yeah, hopefully we can have a good rest of the week, the couple of days we have left. Also, I'll just start by, because when we did the last episode, I started really high and really optimistic, and I was feeling good entering the Kovac era, which Carver did humble me. If you missed last week, Carver did bring me back in about 7 minutes in the episode. Now after this week, man, what did I say a few weeks ago? But like, when do we get to the point where we just like accept that we're a mid-table club and we're just eternally optimistic and we just ride on hope? Like, I think that maybe that's where I was last week, and now I'm just sad. Like, I know we are moving on in the Champions League, right? Like, we did the business in Lisbon, got that done, came away with the draw at home. And I know we'll talk about this match a little more in depth. Coming up, we're gonna talk about. We have some BVB Frauen, the women's team updates. Of course, we're going to talk about the Champions League, moving on in that. But first, we got to start with the Bochum game. So before we get into the Champions League, yeah, I mean, these two matches, though, Bochum self-explanatory, but even the Champions League, it's a home match. I just wanted so much more out of that match. Like, I can accept that we're moving on, but it doesn't give me a lot of hope. So this is drastically different, Jacob, than who was here last week when we were recording. But yeah, you have anything, Carver, you want to get into Bochum?
Not really, but yeah, apparently we were arrogant to think that Dortmund could get more than 2 points on the road versus the two worst teams in the league. We've given them both 3 points to get themselves out of, or at least in contention to get out of a relegation spot. One of the teams, Bochum, was missing their top goal scorer as well as a handful of other starters here, and I hardly have words at this point. I mean, I wouldn't say that we're a mid-table club in general, but I have absolutely come to terms with just accepting the fact that this season and this team in general is a wash. Maybe Dortmund do pull a deep run out of Champions League out of their asses, like you mentioned. But outside of that, I'm not going to continue emotionally investing myself as much as I do into a team that is just complacent, full of complacency in their mediocrity. I say that, and then Saturday morning come again, I'm just going to be like, hey, babe, oh, babe. But
I mean,
for
Saturday
right now,
morning, if we win 3-0 or what, like, I'll be flying high. But
yep.
I will. I was thinking about this before the episode because Carver. Well, I mean, we were texting. We're like, I don't know how long this episode's going to be.
Sorry about that horn there.
Good.
Jesus.
It's like, I don't know how long this episode's going to be. I don't really even know if I want to talk about Dortmund, which kind of brings us back to, I mean, the reality of this podcast and us, right? Like, we're very much as Dortmund fans. We're not pundits. We're just guys who like Dortmund and love the idea of starting a podcast. But in the reality, the real scope of it is like, I mean, we're fans too, and it's just hard. It's just hard sometimes. But that's why this can be good too. And we have a really cool plug the Discord now. If you're not involved in our Discord already, you can join that community because it is this cool little tight-knit group of fellow Dortmund fans from all across the world. Really, it's not even like Carver and I both live in St. Louis. If you're newer to the show, that's how, I mean, we met and we got involved in Dortmund together and then started this show, and it's really expanded, which is really cool because, I mean, what I'm saying is, like, I might not feel like doing an episode right now, but I always like talking Dortmund with my fellow Dortmund friends. And that's what this is about too, like good times and bad. And I think someone did put it in our Discord too. Like, you go through these times, and when you win, that's what makes it so much better. Like, you can't just fall off. You can't just be a fickle fan. Like, I don't want to talk about Dortmund necessarily performance wise, but I'm here to just kind of grown it out with each other. So,
But I do like reminiscing on what Dortmund used to be and actually stood for, which is just like a team that coalesces and fights for each other. A Dortmund side that is eager to push forward in games, especially when they're at home and play attacking football. I'm tired of coming on here week in and week out looking like a complete ass whenever there is like even a half decent performance that we put on or two. And then we try to highlight some positives. We try to build on, I mean, not we, but the team can try to build on some of those few positives that we are seeing. And then they just take the piss days later, not even a week. There are a handful of players like Schlotterbeck, Ryerson, Svensson, the new signing, and ironically, Emre Can, that actually look like they give a shit. and have been staples in the side the past few weeks, but almost everyone else is incredibly inconsistent at best or borderline useless at this point. And in the words of Kendrick Lamar, few solid guys left, but it's not enough. This team needs a complete overhaul. I know you, the listener, and us both are completely sick of hearing this every goddamn year, but there needs to be another rebuild, and this time it needs to be a much larger overhaul and get some of these complacent, mediocre, overplayed, players that simply do not care, or at least care on a consistent basis, to string together the most simple of football actions together to get this team to where it needs to be. Because again, we're against a side like Bochum that, again, it is a derby. It's the only derby that Dortmund have in the Bundesliga at the moment that is even somewhat comparable to Schalke. So yes, there is going to be some fight from them, but we're looking at another team, yet another side that is a fraction the size of Dortmund, in terms of wages, in terms of player status, in terms of historical significance, and they still have the confidence to actually take the game to Dortmund, surprisingly. But this is not an isolated incident. This happens pretty much every week at this point, from tables that are mid-table down to rock bottom, teams actually doing the basics right with some conviction. It happened before. It's going to happen again this season. It's maddening at this point to keep watching, sides that are well below us actually win against us, let alone actually get points week in and week out.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing you often see in football too, like if you've been watching football for a long time, is like there's just teams that, whether it's a big club versus little club, like that, you just approach games in different ways depending on what kind of club you are, like what profile of club you are, and there is this you often see this like confidence from the big clubs coming down, like they know you might need to grind it out against a team that's just going to low block, and that's very much their game plan. But with Dortmund, it's like it's reverse. Like these clubs are like, I would say, mental frailties, and know that they can get at us, and know that if they just switch up their approach to maybe against a Bayern or a Leverkusen like that, like they don't see us like that, and it's clear with how these matches are going and like the confidence and in which they're playing against us, and then just the frailty in this club is crazy. And we'll get into the lineup, but that's such an issue already. Like these teams you obviously do your tape, the coaching staff review, and like that's just, they know they can get at Dortmund by just like going at us, and they know we're so frail. Even as we get in this new era, I know we're still really early, but this is not, I think you typically see, if you can't put everything on a new coach bounce, but you even see like something, you usually see slightly better results off a new coach bounce no matter what. But we'll get into the lineup. Kobel in goal, Svensson starting on the left again, Schlotterbeck and Channer, two center backs, Sula on the right as our right back, just coming back from injury. I've got a question right after related to him right after I get through the rest of this. Gross and Sabitzer, two holding mids, Brandt at the 10, Gittens and Adeyemi on the wings, Girassi up top. This is kind of what we've been seeing with Kovac. I don't think there's been any change except maybe in the center back pairings. Maybe it was Anton in there once, and Sula, I guess, coming in because Rierson was out. But my big question is, where is Jan Kuto? How is Jan Kuto's been healthy, and Sula just gets back from injury, and you start him at right back over Kuto?
Well, I talked a little bit about him last week. I don't want to try to repeat myself too much, but Sula also gives a gift to an opposition to put us in behind. Anton did the same thing with Stuttgart too. Those two players, should be well above Chan at this point, but Chan is somehow, again, ironically, a staple for being the pairing next to Schlotterbeck there. And with Kuto, I don't know, it has to be something that we're not seeing at this point for him not getting minutes. I mean, I've already talked about strictly from a sporting perspective, but you're looking at so many other players in this team who are just as poor, and yet they are still getting the minutes every single week. Yes, Kuto is going against Rierson for that back line. Very few people, including myself, would prefer that. I mean, not including myself, but I would not put Kuto over Rierson there. And when you put him up in the wings too, he's still not as effective. I'm not really sure. I really don't have an answer. There's something that's got to be going on behind the scenes. I don't want to speculate too much, but I'm just amazed, though, that so many players are still just as poor, mediocre, mid, and getting the start every week, like the likes of Brandt. You and I have been a fan of him for a long time, but
no, Brandt boys died. They died.
We need to be honest with ourselves too, and look at the performances objectively here. And It's one thing to have a dip in form. Every player has it, but a lot of these players have been doing it for so long now, and they're completely fine with continuing to be mediocre as well. So I don't really have an answer outside of that for Kuto. I'm not sure.
Yep. I mean, part of me and the Brandt thing, like looking ahead to the Sporting game too, because I think this is really where you I definitely would have liked to see rotation. I mean, I know we've been calling on it, but like I think there is one thing for Kovac to just be like, these are my senior players. These are guys who have been getting the most minutes, and just trying to get them back to a level or get them performing as like the guys with the seniority role, I guess. But you got to change something this weekend, right? Like that's what I'm hoping for, because when you have a guy like Reyna, who we all want to see more from, but we're not going to see that unless he gets time and minutes. And then even like Maxi Bayer, who I think works really hard, like he's not getting a sniff either. I do understand if maybe you're holding him back to be that striker to come in after Guirassy, if you want to sub that out. Like I can find like reasons for all of these shouts, but I mean, Brandt right now, I'm like, why? Like why and why not? I think the Sporting game would have been such a good one to see some rotation. And
Yeah, it was almost the
especially
exact same lineup outside of Sula.
it was, yeah. And when those guys aren't performing, like I feel like now after this, I can validate the last few matches, I think, with this lineup, but now you got to change it because these guys are still not doing anything. So put some other guys in, and unless just nobody on the team is hungry, unless Rain is not hungry either, which would seem crazy to me. But it's just
to
so
add
poor.
to that too, after the Champions League game, Kovac said, this is on Julian Brandt. He said, I was pleased with him. When he has the ball at his feet, his quality is exceptional. He runs a lot for the team, even off the ball. He's one of the players who takes defensive responsibility into his own hands. I couldn't even say that with a straight face. Sorry. Got to recompose myself here.
Maybe he's getting confused with Brandt and Svensson, because like I said, they look pretty similar when they're running around out there. Because last week there was a tackle that Svensson put in, and I was like, dang, Brandt's getting, nope, that's Svensson.
Yeah. Though the qualities that Kovac is referring to have to be almost exclusively from training. I mean, I understand he's not going to single out players and just say how shite they all are at the moment, but just, from the outside looking in, looking at the performances alone, this is completely delusional. I am not seeing these qualities that Kovac is mentioning for Brandt whatsoever. I mean, just going down the list really individually. Reyna, I don't want to keep jumping too far ahead from Sporting, but it's the last thing I'll say before I touch on Bochum for another minute. Reyna comes on, and what was his first touch? A shot on goal. It was off the post. He could have netted it, sure, but you see Reyna brings on so much more that Brandt does not have at the moment. And, Reyna is consistently pretty decent. I'm not saying he's a world beater, but at the moment, it's a no-brainer for me. It's been a no-brainer for me for quite some time for Brandt to really take a serious look at himself as a professional athlete. And you're going to rise to the occasion or not, because before this season, Brandt was, according to reports, going to be one of the faces of this club. He was in contention for a captain. He was going to be that man for that number 10 spot. And now, Reyna's not that player, but God, I don't really know who's going to be at the moment until we see in the summer where people start to either depart or we get some new arrivals here, because it's bleak at the moment for Brandt.
And moving back a little further to our two like CDMs, I guess given the state of our squad, like it makes sense to also see Gross and Sabitzer in there. I know Gross has been a point of like he's just been playing so much and in so many different positions, and I typically don't have a problem with Gross in there. I'd like to see someone else beside him, and obviously those options are limited now. Like I don't want Gross and Oschan. Like that's not what I want back there. I want someone who's a little more creative. And Mech's out, right? Like we lost Mecha. Chukwuemeka is now injured too. It looks like we're just paying for him for an injury for the rest of the season. I haven't seen like all the details on that, but from what I recall, we're not even going to get a chance to see him play in a Dortmund kit, maybe, because I don't know if they're going to buy him after this loan, but that's not looking good. And like I get these are our options kind of in that CD, those 2 6s. I don't know, we're harped on it so much about center backs and fullbacks and the lack of depth and options. And now before I felt like we had some decent depth in that midfield. Like it feels like that has now dwindled too, because like everywhere else,
yeah.
Unlike I think Mullen leaving, I know people had their reasons and to see him out the door, they wanted him gone for multiple reasons, but I think that's hurting us too. Like not having this someone else. It's about the competition and making your team stronger with players who can compete against each other. And now it's always Adeyemi on the right now, and it's Gittens on the left. And like, I know Durnville will come in off the bench, and now we're seeing Bayer coming off the bench, but like, you're losing depth and again competition with letting someone like Mullen go and not bringing in another person. Like, you're just, we brought in a left fullback, thankfully, and he's been getting minutes, but now I think we're seeing those same issues. And when you have guys who aren't just performing or dipping, like, there's no one keeping them honest. There's not a chance for them to lose their spot clearly.
It shows that we're in some serious trouble when you have 3 managers in the span of a single season and everyone continues to collectively underperform. Yeah, those comments from Kovac was pretty alarming for me. You know, the fact that he has still not gotten a win at home. He's had 2 opportunities now. It is early days, of course, and, you know, he's come in at a really, really rough time, the worst time in over a decade at this club, but still, you know, I keep saying it every week, this team needs results. And it needs to get results against teams that are beatable, especially against teams that are rock bottom. One of the few things I just wanted to mention too for this Bochum game, and speaking back to them actually just trying to have a go at us early on, hit 4 shots in the first 9 minutes. You know, I think we had a shot right after that in the 10th, but the fact that they were able to get 4 off, 1 or 2 of them were on target, pressing really high. Again, the basics, nothing too complicated. You know, it's that easy for us to be on our heels against sides that are so underwhelming and well below us in terms of quality, all of that. So I don't have too much more for this Bochum game. I mentioned Sula already. Between the 45th and 60th minute, there were more we lost more challenges and had less shots than Bochum too. So it's not like, you know, from the beginning, you know, they came onto us and then settled in, and the Dortmund were able to come back into this game. It was pretty much the whole game that Bochum were still able to pretty much play Dortmund out of the park here. And, you know, now 2 games in a row we have not scored a goal. And Bochum, even in that second half too, they had a quicker ball regain. They've regained possession quicker than they did in the first half. So, you know, across the board, no matter what the stats are, out of possession, in possession, Dortmund continued to underperform collectively, individually, and it's unbelievably frustrating. Again, I don't have even the words at this point to describe what is happening at this club.
I think previewing this match too, like, we knew it could be a difficult match at Bochum. Like, they definitely understand the derby in it, and it's a match that they are typically up for. But we've had difficult away matches at Bochum in recent years. Like, I remember covering them on this podcast, and with that being slightly worried, but knowing like we need to win and to really have some progression here. Like, we need to get this win, and it's arguably like the weakest Bochum side we've seen in the last few years, anyways.
Right. Again, missing their top scorer, missing a handful of other starters too. I don't know what other scenario you could draw up for this team to actually get 3 points on the road at this point. I mean, it's happened, once or twice, but we're looking at teams that were literally rock bottom, and they get 3 points against us to actually get higher up the table. We are gifting oppositions points. Should be a no-brainer for us. I said it last week, I don't care that it's a derby. Yes, there's going to be fight, but it should not be an excuse for us to actually go and take the game to them. I mean, injuries aren't even an excuse at this point anymore either, right? Like, we've been having that crisis for so long now, and of course there are still players that have knocks, of course, but it's just not an excuse. There's still quality there to overwhelm an opposition, and we're not seeing it. It's not even a matter of on a consistent basis at this point. It's just, can we string together a simple 10-yard pass, in a single game?
Brant can't, that's for sure.
Very few people can.
Earlier, you did mention Kovac not winning at home yet, and I believe it was in the Sporting match that Kovac hasn't actually won at the Westfalenstadion, which is in general. And here's his chance, right? We're already up 3-0 against Sporting in the Champions League, doing the business on the road, like I mentioned earlier. And now's a pretty good time to get your first home win, so you can just move on in the Champions League in a even more dominant fashion, especially bouncing back at the Bochum match. I don't even like using the term bouncing back, because we've seen it all season. We saw it last year. The difference between Champions League and Bundesliga Dortmund is just staggering. And it's so bad now that it's even hard for me to get excited over the Champions League wins, because because I just know like we still can't prove it in the Bundesliga. But very similar lineup hosting Sporting. The only change, I'm not going to go through it all because the only change was Rierson back in at right back over Sula. So the rest is all the same who we saw against Bochum, and more of a chance for these guys to prove themselves, which I feel like some of them did. I feel like Brandt was still pretty poor. We saw Gittens get yanked off at half. I did see just one stand out to me. Like, I mean, overall, I was pretty bored and underwhelmed watching this match. And I did put in our Discord, like, I think when we Girassi missed the PK, and I was like, oh, we're cooked. And someone was like, we're still 3-0 up on aggregate. I was like, I know that. I know, but we're just so bad. It's just so bad. The only positive that I have that really stood out to me is like Sabitzer was trying to hit him from like, he was taking some long range shots, and I just appreciated the effort. Most of them were on goal. One of them was a really good save by the keeper, and to just see a little more life from Sabitzer, it looked like he really wanted to finally get his first goal of the season. I mean, that was my one call out, really. Besides that, I don't have much. I was just so bored watching this game.
I know. I'm racking my brain trying to think of other things that you could take away from this game, and there's not much. Sporting did have to, they were in the position to take the game to us. They had plenty of goals to score to actually get even back into the competition. It's a mountain to climb, but still, Dortmund are at home on a European night. That's whenever the magic happens, not just this season, but just in general. Like, that is whenever this club can really come alive and play against anyone in the world on their day. But the complacency from both sides, very, very boring game, pretty dull. Both teams just kind of settling for the scoreline that they already had. It seemed like Sporting kind of went into this thinking that they weren't going to win anyway, so they weren't really looking to push forward. In terms of like solid performances, the partnership of Chan and Schlotterbeck again. I mean, you could argue that we should have scored this game with the penalty from Girassi and the shots from Sabitzer, and also the shot that went off the post from Reina. But either way, it just needs to be better, and I don't think that's good enough at all. And we shouldn't be relying on a 0-0 to be like, oh, this is who we are now. We're just barely, getting through, and we're fine with that.
Especially at home. And Kovac should have all the desire to get this win. And I do think, I mean, looking at stats wise, like overall it was a better performance, but you miss a penalty, that's so poor. And even if we would go through, like, I would have preferred to see us like create and score something from open play or get one of those Sabitzer goals, but even like winning on a PK, like that would have just made it feel better overall. Like just getting the win coming off of that Bochum match, and to just draw at home is what's so disappointing. Like, you're not proving anything to me, because I know it was a game where you didn't have to do anything, but you're at home. You should just prove, like hit them while they're down, like just go on and like just go off in this match. And we still like don't see that from these guys.
Yeah. Again, it doesn't matter the scenario, whether it's rock bottom team in the Bundesliga or a team you're up 3-0 up against already. Kovac still is scared to get any sort of rotation in here, which, could contribute to more injuries, of course, too. But yeah, I wish we could have seen a bit more rotation. Gio Reyna did come on a bit earlier than we are used to, thank God. Because not only does he not start, but he comes on 85th minute, 87th minute every time that he does come on. So thankfully he was able to get a little bit more, and you saw just, again, how much more effective he can be than Brandt at the moment. He's a lot more purposeful, very silky. His ball retention is 1.5 million times better than than Brandt, at the moment. And then when you get into that attacking third, whether it's the crosses from Reina, they're so much more accurate than Brandt's. His shooting capabilities too are much better at the moment. I don't have too much more of this Sporting game. This men's senior team is cooked.
Well, let's talk about a team that's not cooked in. Quick note again, we are moving on to the Champions League. I don't know the opponent yet. I think that draw's coming up tomorrow. Or if you're listening to this on Friday, it might be out. So apologies, time stamping this. We recorded before the draw. So more to come in the Champions League, which is, I guess, a benefit. But yeah, let's talk about a team that's not cooked. And I probably said this in a joking way too many times, and now just going to full-fledged, like, if you're tired of Dortmund letting you down, just watch the women's team, because they're cooking always.
Mm-hmm. And they've been out of action for a while. And y'all ready for this pronunciation? Mute yourselves for this one. But they're finally back in action in the Bundesliga on the 23rd, which is Sunday here, 3 p.m. local time, versus SUS Concordia Fleisheim, who sits in 13th in the Bundesliga. So it'll be a good opportunity to finally see the women's team play some competitive football in their division for the first time in a while. It's been at least a month or maybe a month and a half, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, please feel free to give them a spin. I know originally their games were streamed on Twitch. I'll try to find another link here that you can actually watch the games too. And I also made a channel in our Discord. So if you want to chat about them as well, we have a little dedicated space for that, because that is a hell of a lot more positive and fun to talk about than the men's team at the moment. So highly recommend getting in there. I'm not even trying to plug the Discord. I just think it's a good opportunity for actually us to prop up some women's football, and people that actually give a shit about the club.
Yeah, women's team always. Yeah, if you can catch a match and you just want to see the Dortmund win, if that's all you need to make you happy, just watch the Dortmund's women's match. All right, coming up this weekend, home again. Let's freaking get a win, but hosting Union Berlin, kickoff 12:30 Eastern on Saturday. Carver, how you feeling going into this one?
Not great. Not great. You could ask me that every single game for the rest of the season, probably, and I'm probably going to give you that same answer. I don't know. I don't even have words at this point. For God's sake, I just hope we can get a win at home.
I just looked on the table because for pure sanity reasons, just try not. Why do I need to look at the table, really, to see where Union Berlin was? They're 13th on 24 points, and we are 11th on 29 points. And just to see us, I know we've been this low. I just haven't actually looked at it.
We also have a negative goal differential as well.
It's great.
A not so fun fact for you. Berlin's been a mixed bag these past few weeks. I mean, they've had big wins against Mainz, who've been really solid this season, and they've also beaten Hoffenheim relatively recently, but they've also fallen to the likes of St. Pauli, Leipzig. They didn't lose to Leipzig, but they drew a few weeks back, and then most recently they lost 2-1 against Gladbach. Yeah, bit of a mixed bag, but you also kind of know what you're going to get from Berlin here. It's a pretty similar, very robust, physical Terzic style system, if you want to call it that. But should be points in the bag. But with this team, who knows? At this point, throw the women's team on. Get them. They're actually worthy of playing in front of 80,000 people in the Westfalen. You know what I mean?
No joke. Oh my gosh. I was thinking about this watching the Bochum match because it was the away, and the Dortmund fans are just so incredible. I don't know at this point how they're still doing it, how they're still at every away match, just extremely loud. Like they constantly drown out the home fans at away matches, especially in those little stadiums. But I almost want to see a silent protest. I want to see them. It's one of my favorite things, seeing how crazy the yellow wall specifically is, or the away fans and how loud they chant just nonstop throughout the match. But I kind of want to see them just not. That's kind of what I want, a little pushback. To their credit, they're so good at pushing back against the board and stuff like that. We often see these banners, and I'm thankful for the stadium for even letting them speak their minds like that and bring in some banners that are calling on the heads of the club to be better. But I also want to, I get their role and they want to help the team push on, but when the team doesn't even want to try, I almost want to see them go silent. Because they're just I don't feel like the 11 on the field deserve the support they're getting is my whole thing behind it.
Well, the protests by the Unity and just the rest of the Cit Tribune are always on point. And, this is me just strictly from the outside. I'm not sure if the club is entirely always agreeable to what some of those banners are going to be saying at the time. But that's the whole point of a protest, right? It's supposed to be disruptive. It's supposed to be in your face. So, credit to them. And there needs to be more. There needs to be more honesty from the fans when they're paying good, hard-earned money and spending their time to come out and support a team of again, that's full of complacency, and those players are getting their checks either way. So, and we've seen other instances too this season of just kind of disrespect towards the supporters here. So yeah, I'm all for more protests, whether, whatever method they want to choose there, but there needs to be a reaction from this team. And it needs to be a reaction actually pushing forward too, and not just like the rest of the season, 20, 30 minutes here and there like that. The Sporting game, or even the glimpses against Stuttgart when we lost. I'm sick of just having the bar in hell.
So back to Saturday, do you have any predictions for this? And I know we did this, I think we did this last week, but what changes do you want to see? You want to see Reina come in? Are there any other changes you want to see in this team?
Yeah, Reina needs to start. I don't think there's going to be much. I mean, Kovac is looking at the moment that he's not going to be putting in much rotation. I think Ben Zabaini is back to full training. I'm curious to see who Kovac fancies there. If he's not up to fitness, Svensson has looked really, really solid. Other changes off the top of my head, God, I could be missing one of the, that after we stop recording, I'm like, oh, that should have been one. But I'm just thinking off the roster at my top of my head, and I'm like, man, everyone is so underwhelming. So I can't really think of anything else at the moment.
I wouldn't mind seeing Bayer come in, whether it's for Gittens or Adeyemi. Like, I'm fine either way. Like, I don't think you can make two changes on the wings, because I do feel like Gittens has dipped a little bit, and there's been no one really to challenge him definitely as of late, since Mullen's gone out. So maybe you just let him like start on the bench, get a little taste of that, or Adeyemi too. Like, I'd be fine with either of them kind of starting on the bench to let Bayer come in and get a start. I don't think I'd not complaining if Duranville gets a start, but I don't see him changing both, and I don't see him necessarily getting a start. I would love to see Reyna start. I think I'm fine with Chan and Slaughterbeck. Like, that's fine with me, like, given how Chan has been performing.
And given also how Anton and Sula have both been performing too.
Yeah, exactly. I don't mind Svensson starting again. Like, I'm fine with that too, especially if Benzabaini is coming back. Like, might as well just let him get some minutes at the end if he is ready. So I don't have a problem there. I'd like to see a little more changes up top, though, specifically Brandt, and finally get some minutes for Reyna. And then
Vachin too, right? Remember whenever we were a club that we actually promoted
youth? I completely
too,
forgot about him, because he hasn't gotten a single minute this year.
That was supposed to be with Shine. I mean, I was thinking he would get some minutes under Tolberg too. Tolberg only had 2 games, of course.
He's on the bench, and we're like, oh my gosh, finally, at least he's going to sub in, and nothing.
And you're looking at that midfield, and you're like, anyone would be better than what we're seeing at the moment. So, maybe not a start, but we need to see more Vachin. I mean, he could plug in, and he's pretty versatile too in the spine of that midfield. So I don't really see why he shouldn't be, given the performances of other people in those positions.
Yeah, that'd be great. And now I apologize to him, because earlier when I said we don't really have any other options, I forget, because we haven't even given him a sniff this year. Which I remember at the end of last year, I'd seen him come in. Like, we were so high, we're like, oh my gosh, who's this kid? This is amazing. Like, great performance. Like, yeah, I can't wait to see him next year. And then nothing. Like, he was kind of one of our one to watch, I think, at the start of the year, and then absolutely nothing. Score predictions, I will start, because I'm not just going to do my typical, we're going to win 3-1, 2-1. I think we're going to draw 1-1. I think we might score relatively early, and then we're going to let them get back into it.
I'm going to go draw as well. I'm going to go 2-2. I don't see this team conceding less than 2 goals for quite some time now, even though the back line is probably the most consistent out of anything in this team right now. But yeah, I'm going to go 2-2, which none of us, or neither of us, went, right? Like,
no, I don't want to be predicting
for a win.
A draw, like a draw that feels like a loss, but that's just where I'm at. Like, because I want to start the episode like I did last week, where I'm hyped. Even if you bring me down,
I want to be there with you, Jacob.
I don't want to record an episode
to be up there
where I'm already like, well, welcome to the BVB podcast. Don't feel like doing it today because the team sucks. I don't want to do that again next week.
Yeah.
Well, no, we do appreciate you guys hanging out and listening. We would love to hear your predictions too, if you've been plugging it all along. So, I mean, if you're watching on YouTube, drop it in the comments, or if you're not already connected in our Discord, and you can send us your thoughts in there as well, get connected with some other Dortmund fans. The link for that is in the description of this episode as always, or you can go to thebvbpodcast.com to get all of our socials, watch the latest episodes, listen, everything is just thebvbpodcast.com is the easiest way, or just scroll down and click there. But yeah, we're out of here. We appreciate you guys hanging out, and here's to Saturday. Kovac's
and
first
Sunday,
win.
Check out the women's team.
Oh, yeah.
Screw Saturday.
If Kovac wants to get his first win, I won't be too mad about it. That'd be great, actually.
Yeah, that would be really helpful, actually, Kovac. Please.
All right, we'll see you guys later.